There's the potential that the city people supporting local production can shift it and make it more possible for more things to be done locally, which would help to reverse all the trend of centralization, getting industry back out to the smaller centers and production being distributed locally. The potential's there.
I'm optimistic about the future of the Farmers Union in Canada. In a lot of the other regions like Ontario and Eastern Canada, there's a whole different group that's involved now. A lot of them smaller landholders, but tremendously labor-intensive operations, and they're supplying food to mainly larger urban centers. We've got a lot in common with them on major issues, which are things like the farmer's right to save and reuse seed. And that's just another manifestation of a tremendous corporate concentration that's been going on everywhere. But these corporations are never going to be satisfied. It doesn't matter how much power and control they have, they're going to want more.
When we were kids, we used to be able to take our stuff to town. The surplus that you had at home, well, you're not allowed to do that no more because of these big corporations. At least that's the way I see it, they've pushed it till they got it their way, and I don't know how we're going to reverse it.
You know, the history of the farm movement really started with the grain industry. Right back at the turn of the century, when farmers wanted to load their own boxcars over the sidings so they could bypass the elevators. And then later the Grain Growers Grain Company, which kind of bypassed the grain exchange to some extent. And then we got the wheat pool, which was a cooperative marketing board. But we finally got our act right, and we got the Canadian Wheat Board. And it's the only one that's really endured all through those years. And now we stand in grave peril of losing our Canadian Wheat Board. And it's going to be a tremendous catastrophe when this happens.
We got to have the organization like we have got to keep things going in the right direction, to educate the few young farmers we've got. Because they're going to get caught, well, they are caught in this big conglomerate world of big corporations and stuff, and we got to get somehow educate so they all get behind, or they're not going to be around very long either.
I remember clearly my son Matthew coming back from PEI, having gone with the NFU to work on a potato farm. Before he went to PEI, he would grumble about the farm work he was doing and what he was being paid, and he came back and he said he couldn't believe it, how hard the men worked, and they were earning less money than he was around our farm. So his attitude changed completely. He was really learning a lot about McCain's and how they control the agenda of the potato farmers.
The problem is not that there's no money in food production. There's a lot of money in food production, but the farmer's share has been getting lower, going lower and lower each year because other players are taking the money that used to go to the farmers.
It's very important that we find ways of communicating with the farm group, particularly the younger farm group that are high-tech and are independent and thinking they know more than the others and can do better than the average, so they want out of the pool, etc. They don't know the history. They don't really think this through. Do they really think they're able to compete with the major corporations and come out on top? I think it's very necessary to have discussions with them, and sometimes very difficult because they think that they're smarter than the rest.
It's extremely important to have a good mix of men and women in the organization. Mm-hmm. You go to national meetings or international meetings, provincial meetings where politicians are talking about farm politics, what you've got is a bunch of middle-aged or older white men sitting around a table, generally going with the flow of whatever the discussion is, whatever they think the government position is. And the Farmers Union really benefits by having a cross-section of the farm community there at the meetings.
I will rejoice in the day where there isn't the need for a women's branch, but it's very easy for men in the farm movement to be the movement, because it has been the men that are recognized as the farmers. The Farmers Union has been extremely good in making sure that there's a role for women.
Things have cycled against farmers for so long. We're looking for really quick fixes because, you know, a lot of farmers and communities are in desperate circumstances, but it takes a long time for the real systemic change to happen.
More
Yeah.
for I can do with this, and I is not going to win,
But
we could.
In order to have a successful demonstration, you need to have a movement behind you. You need to have people that are going to show up. It's easy for our opposition, the governments mainly, but other corporate players, to end up with a lot more media time than the Farmers Union can get. And if your demonstration ends up being portrayed as an anti-consumer demonstration or something that's going to make life difficult for non-farmers, you can find yourself feeling like you're winning the war in a demonstration, but really losing the larger battle in trying to court public opinion.
So we need power in the marketplace, but all that's being eroded as well. Even the milk is being eroded. And so the farmers will be left out in the marketplace, and it's going to make it very difficult for small farmers in the community to survive.
Well, I could sum it up this way. The Farmers Union is made up of people that are really curious. They want to know. And they want to debate whether they, you know, think they are going to come down on one side or another. They want to debate. And a lot of them will play the devil's advocate. And they're very good at playing a devil's advocate role. But it's because they're curious and they want to know why things work. And that, more than anything else, I think, is what I really admire the Farmers Union for.
We need to be growing and getting more members, and that requires educating them. And this kind of a discussion around a table, I think, is how much of the farm movement developed in the past, and it needs to happen again.
Gee, now there's a third or a half women every time you have a meeting, you know, and they're right in the middle of it.
We were organizing farmers. We wanted decent prices. Things were very bad at that time. And so we were going to organize, and we were going to go to the government, and we were going to talk and see if we couldn't do something about the prices for farmers, especially here in Canada. But that's the main thing I did when I first started, was talk about farming to people to join the National Farmers Union. So I'd say they were mainly curious about what this organization was going to do, mainly for them. For anything craft produced, you know, and the milk and the whatnot, we set up a boycott. We asked farmers not to buy anything of craft. Oh yeah, consumers began curious what these farmers were doing, what were they talking about, and as they learned more about craft and what they produce and why and so on and forth, they began to boycott craft too. When it's prices and money, and it affects you, and you're buying groceries, you're going to kind of listen and see what these farmers are all about. Organic, I think, was one of the main words that they first started pushing around. Organic this and organic that. And the farmers said, what is it? Well, you know, how is it going to affect us? How much is it going to cost us? Where do we get it from? What country, you know, are we going to be able to produce it in Canada? Or will we always have to get it overseas? And what's our government going to do to support us and this type of thing? So those are some of our early problems. I wasn't sure what a convention was or what was going to be expected of me. And I think I went to Winnipeg the first time to see what it was all about. And met a lot of farmers from across the country. And we all had the same problem. We wanted more money for what we produced. You know, that was it. So how do we do this? How do we educate it? And how do we educate the government? Definitely. How can you doubt that? When you have us women, yes. The women were very active in the National Farmers Union organization. Whenever I went to meetings, and they say, well, can you drive a tractor? Can you this? I can remember the first time Ed taught me to, it was a little bit of land up near Buxton, and he said, I think you can work it up. Just go slow, and he told me what to do. And all of a sudden, there's 3 buses, the kids getting off, and they're staring. She's a city girl. She married Ed. Look what she's doing. She's driving. And so I drove a tractor and talked to the kids. Say, this is a wonderful chance to talk to them about farm union. So I covered all of South Africa, and I learned a lot. And I hoped I brought back a lot to the National Farmers Union. Yeah, we were quite proud of that when we'd get letters and cards from people around the world and asking about the Farmers Union, or if what Dolores was doing, or where was she, or something like this. And it made us feel good, you know. We've done something. We always answered letters. We always sent postcards and pictures, and invited them to come here whenever it was possible to come here for something. Sometimes take money out of our pocket or whatever, but because I think we've had people here from around the world come, and they were interested mainly because of me being colored, what was happening, and we'd have them around, you know, to see about the Farmers Union and whatnot. So it was interesting to meet people from around the world. It said my bags never got unpacked to the end.
Never got unpacked.
Farming is important, and you go to the grocery store to buy your food and whatnot, and it's from farmers who produced it, and you're going to buy it or whatnot. So I think the message is there. You like to eat? Well, you support the farmers. It's just that simple. But we have a National Farmers Union shirt that I'll wear sometime. What's that for? What do you do? And what do you get out of it? And why, you know, unions? And where do you meet? When do you? They just ask a lot of questions they don't know. So you just take time to educate them. And especially the children in school. I had any trouble. The kids always wanted me to talk to them about farming and to listen and to learn about farming. So I never had any problems with the education part of it. And so every time there's a government meeting, there's farm union people sitting there. And every time, no matter out west or wherever we were, and we felt that we should be there, there's those darn farm unions sitting there again. But we would be there. And in most cases, we'd listen. But if we had something to say, I don't think you'd find a bashful farmer, because this is their livelihood and their family and whatnot. And I think we would speak out and say what had to be said, because I know they didn't know who I was or where I was from or what I was or what nationality or whatnot, but they knew my name was Dolores.
We have to understand other people's problems and needs. And again, it goes back to the self-interest thing. If we're only in the game for our own interest, it's not going to work.
You know, we have encountered the, I guess the conception that, oh, do you have to be organic to be in the NFU, or and I think you find that a number of our members are organic, or at least farming ecologically, because that fits with the NFU's idea of you know, fighting corporatization and globalization, but at the same time we do not want to ignore our brothers and sisters that are conventional.
I often end up talking about the NFU being unique in its structure and its grassroots orientation. It makes it different from any other general farm organization in Canada.
That's what gives us our strength, is we're all different and we all have different types of farms, but the core belief system of philosophy of our organization, it's the members that come to us know why they belong to us, and they're drawn to us because of what we stand for.
There was a whole package of material produced for us to take out to meetings and talk about why we have the Farmers Union. It was a wonderful document. We passed the material around, and we have, you know, this person reads some, this person reads some. Some of the people reading it would break down because it was so emotional. A few years after that, the union went through a very bad time. We lost a lot of membership, but those locals that we did that work in stayed strong and active, even though a lot of the others failed, because they didn't have that connection about really what it's all about. Why are we doing this? And that's crucial. We have to get back and do more of that stuff.
What I've found important from going to the National Convention and in previous situations is our connections internationally. It means a lot, I think, to us to hear about other farmers across Canada and then also about farmers in other parts of the world, and to realize that we have so much in common with their situation, the same challenges and the kind of solutions that maybe some of them are developing that we can use. And I think the other important thing about the national aspect is that, like, what's good for a grain farmer might not be good for a beef farmer. You know, if the price of grain is up, that's bad for a beef farmer. And so those two commodities could be pitted against each other, but the National Farmers Union always tries to say what would be good for both of those commodities, or all our commodities, you know. Don't have to have memories about it. We've been boycotting Kraft for 40 years, or whatever. To me, anyway, it represents all the small cheese factories that were bought up by big corporations and then closed.
Boycott Kraft, it brings back memories of, I was probably about 10 years old, and my grandmother was very involved in National Farmers Union. Grandma was quite a farm family advocate, and she, at the time, took some Boycott Kraft signs into my dad had a grocery store, and she snuck in one day and stuck some Boycott Kraft signs around on the different Kraft products, and snuck back out again. And it didn't go over well in my family, but I kind of admire her for taking that stand, and yeah, that's my earliest memory of the NFU, actually.
Well, the way the NFU is developing in our area is that the kind of membership we're attracting are new farmers that have never farmed before, may not even have a farm background, and they've come into farming and they've found a home in the National Farmers Union.
So I've been borrowing land from Mapleton's organic dairy for the last 4 years. It's sort of a relationship-based farming. The eater, we like to call them, purchases a share of the harvest at the beginning of the season. So that's sort of when I need the money to buy seeds and fix my equipment and get the season rolling. Well, we're here at the Waterloo Farmers Market. So we come every Thursday from 3 till 7. We bring all of our produce. And we have CSA members that come up every week and pick up their share of the harvest. And we also sell some produce at the market itself. So even the people that pick up right in the city, like Waterloo, they still come out to the farm. We had a squash toss on this past week. So we had about 25 shareholders that came out and helped us harvest our squash and pumpkins. So that gets them right out here, seeing the garden and experiencing farming firsthand. And they're a lot closer to where their food's coming from than the average person would be. No, I grew up in the suburbs of Oakville. No farming, no even real gardening background at all. I just sort of came to it in university. I did a few apprenticeships on farms around southern Ontario and really enjoyed it. So I ended up out here. That was sort of my goal all along. You know, I wanted to own my own farm, and this being at Mapleton's was a great stepping stone. So yeah, I purchased a place. It's 70 acres, 45 workable. All been in hay for about 10 years, so it hasn't been intensively farmed. So it's certifiable. I'll be certified organic next year for my first year gardening there. I didn't necessarily plan out the way I got into farming, but it's worked really well for me to have sort of an incubated experience on a more established farm that's allowed me to use their equipment and their land and pick their brains for, information about things I didn't necessarily know about, and then gradually establish myself into the place where I can now have my own farm and be a little bit more autonomous.
Going to be taking over from Caitlin. I'm inheriting her garden. She's graciously leaving behind. I'm going to be starting up my own organic vegetable garden. Pretty excited, a little bit anxious. I'm borrowing a fair bit of money, so that makes me nervous. But I know I can do it. Growing the vegetables is the easy part. It's more selling it is going to be more of a challenge. It's amazing. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. It's pretty rare that people would, give you free reign. I mean, Martin said so long as it's following the organic certification, I'm free to do whatever I want, which is very nice. And he's letting me use his land and cheap rental of equipment and free manure, free electricity and water. For a young farmer just starting out, if you don't have a lot of money, it's tough. So I'm really thankful that they've given me this opportunity. I went woofing. That's how I got into farming. The WOOF program, worldwide opportunities on organic farms. Anybody who is interested can go and work on different farms around the world for room and board, and that's what I did after high school. I grew up in the city. I had a little garden, a little vegetable garden, but really it was like a whole other world I never knew existed, and I got addicted.
Plant organic. Well, a lot of them have farms like chicken farms, but I'm probably one of the only ones that has a garden.
I think it's good to see young people that are keen to be involved in some aspect of farming. I actually think on a lot of farms in this area there's not a lot of place for young people to get involved, and so their chances on being involved in the future are actually less when they can't be involved. She's been here for years at the market selling vegetables, and not because anybody's sending her in here, but because she likes to do it. If we want young people to be involved in farming, I think we better make them a place to get involved from the time they're small.
We're a certified organic grain farm primarily. I guess that's what we usually say is we do grains first and oilseeds like soybeans. But then we do some sheep and chickens and eggs and sort of just a little bit of a mix to sort of keep it diversified. I really have been really lucky that I haven't had to put a whole lot of effort into marketing, and I've been able to be a farmer first and not having to be out there, knocking down people's doors. And it's a very small niche market. But yeah, I just sell it to individuals, word of mouth. We have a website and we have some email contact lists that we send out. Part of my pricing that I do for my lamb, it's a premium over conventional, but it's still, just my cost of production plus a little bit. And I think that awareness about cost of production and what it's really costing us to produce our food is something that the public really needs to be aware of. And I think there is a little bit of a growing awareness, but you still hear a lot of complaints about the price of food and all these things. And so I think fair trade would be just another sort of way that that awareness can get out there. We both sort of started it as thinking it was like a lucrative business venture, organic is this niche thing and there's all these premiums and it's going to be great. And then when we started farming, we realized that really it was the philosophy that we agreed with. And so even if the market went under, we still didn't think we could go back. And so yeah, now it's just become the way that we farm, and I can't see us doing it any differently no matter what happens. Being able to make a living off of it is the solution. I feel like it comes a bit back to government onus. They have to sort of accept that we're here and that we're really vital and that our food system needs small farms and small farmers. And so once that's sort of decided and agreed upon, then people will be able to start making a living, and then we'll be able to pass it on to our kids, and it'll be a viable option for them.
We're taking over a farm that has older equipment. And because it has older equipment, we are able to go to a more European style of financing. If you look in countries like Germany, farm transfers, there's never a cash exchange. It's often developed where the next generation will provide housing or a percentage of, to pay for the balance of it. In North America, it's, we can't do this because mom and dad's retirement is based on them selling to the Hutterites and getting $4 million for their 30 acres of land. That is not sustainable. And if we continue with that model, there's no way somebody like my partner and I could do it. I think the size of our operation and the type of operation that we have that is going to cater to the direct marketing, local food movement approach is going to be the way of the future. I think that the link that the Farmers Union is going to play that's the most important is that marriage between the urban consumer, especially in Western Canada, and the local food market.
I didn't come from a farming family. My family didn't have anything to do with agriculture. I grew up in British Columbia. I completed an ecological agriculture program at a farm school on the West Coast. And after that, I knew that's what I wanted to do. So I started working at an organic farm in the interior of BC. And I worked there for 5 years, and I pretty much have modeled my farm after that farm on a smaller scale because it was extremely efficient and organized, and I learned a lot of good systems. How this place began was 6 years ago. A group of us purchased a farm. It's a 100-acre farm in Tamagouche, Nova Scotia. And we purchased it together. We all put in different amounts of money. And now we've been, over the last 6 years, we've kind of been in the process of transferring it over into a land trust, a cooperative that will hold the land in trust. And each of us, so 7 different family units, have long-term renewable leases on this land. So you can see behind me there's different houses being built on the lease sites. I have a lease on 9 acres of the agricultural land. I'm growing certified organic vegetables. I'm farming this land with no mortgage, but with the security of owning the land. That gives me a lot of freedom that I see other young farmers and other new farmers really struggling with. The 2 major challenges for young and beginning farmers are access to land and access to financing. And this model is a way of kind of circumventing those problems and being able to get on the land and start farming. Essentially what we're trying to do is create a local model of fair trade where you know, we are able to make a just living doing what we're doing, and we're able to get our product directly to the consumer. I think at first when we came here, they thought we were a little bit crazy and weren't too sure, but as soon as we started, you know, trying and farming, and, you know, we were haying and we were trying to grow grain, and the more we've done and the more we've reached out to them and asked for help, they've been great, and they're so supportive, and they're excited to see young people back on the land and trying, you know, and farming.
But I know in Saskatchewan they used to have government farmland conservation program where the government would buy farmland from older farmers who were retiring and make it available to new farmers at an affordable rate. So that seems like a great program to me, although my understanding is that they don't do that anymore.
Federally, a lot of people are feeling like agriculture is just not on the table, like it's just not even in the consciousness of the general public, let alone the politicians. So I think that's one of our biggest problems.
We're going to have to educate people about good food. And I think that we will, that is what will make us profitable. Not that I think we're going to be rich or anything doing this, but I think we'll be okay.
You know, the best way to support farmers is to support your local farmers. You know, like, there's tons of roadside stands, there's tons of farmers markets, there's lots of CSAs opening up across the country.
When I go to the farmers market in Halifax right now, I'm the only young farmer there, and all the other farmers with vegetables are, you know, of a certain generation above me, and they're all male. I would really like to see a lot more young people coming in before it's too late, when we can still learn from that generation.
I came in through the side door, I guess. Someone asked me to work on a membership drive because our province was putting through legislation so the general farm organizations would be accredited, and it would be mandatory for farmers who wanted certain privileges would have to join a general farm organization. And when that finished, I found that I was hooked. By then, of course, we had joined, and my husband was very interested in it as well. And we just decided to keep working towards building membership and becoming more involved.
The key issue is farm income, because for those of us in non-supply management, we're at the whim of the market. And today there's not a lot of local market. And I know that even in supply managed commodities, that it's getting tougher and tougher to exist.
Well, we're of course in the supply managed commodity, but we have to be very careful to try and protect that. But my feeling is that farmers, we need to expand on that, and farmers just have no power in the marketplace now. Well, they do negotiate a contract through their potato agency, but the company also controls the contracts and who gets the contracts and where they go, so it makes it difficult to negotiate, I think.
My husband and I were in potatoes. Now I'm very small scale potatoes, but we did have contracts in McCain's. There was enough maybe money in the contract, providing you met all their criteria, that would cover your input costs, but we wanted a profit. The small contract guys, they make it harder and harder for them every year, and that's what was our farm was, a small contract farm, and all the hoops you had to jump through to, meet that contract, and it just became to the point that it wasn't viable any longer. From my personal point of view, I think they would be very happy if they had a dozen farmers who would supply them their total amount of product they need.
As you've seen driving across our little province, we're fairly scattered, the farms, and there's a lack of a feeling of community. There was a time when there might have been, I'm not sure exactly on this road, Victor could tell you, but farms right along the road, and there was a feeling of community. And when the kids went to school, they all smelled the same. They all had a cow, and there were several cows. And when they socialized, they did it as a farming community, a rural farming community. Well, now that's changed completely, and farms are scattered and quite isolated, and you can drive right across this province and not even see any cattle.
I think there's a change in attitude. People want to eat healthy food. Coming from a background where a lot of potatoes were grown on a farm, I know the amount of chemicals that were dumped into that operation just to get those potatoes so that they were the nice, beautiful potatoes to go to market. At the point that I didn't really want to eat them myself. And a lot of people are looking at what the lifestyle is now for the large farms, and they're saying, I don't want that lifestyle. I don't want to be told by an identity that I have to do this and this and this to produce my crop. I want to have a say in how I produce my crop. As one guy put it to me, I'm working 7 days a week now. I might as well be a dairy farmer. That's what he said, a potato farmer said. Because he said if they want me to deliver 4,000 barrels of potatoes and it's Friday night and they call, they say, you be there tomorrow morning. He says, I'm working all weekend or I'm working at nights delivering till 2 in the morning.
There are all kinds of young people that would like to farm or be involved in agriculture, and a lot of these ones that are starting up now are a few generations removed from the farm even, but they still have that urge to go back. And a lot of people who grew up on farms have heard about hard times so long that they're not all that interested in it. So our new generation of farmers is going to be a whole different bunch of people, and I think our new generation of farms are going to be a lot different than the direction we're going right now.
Eventually, we're going to be out of farming, and we need somebody to produce food to feed New Brunswickers. We don't want to be a province or a country that's importing all their food.
As dairy farmers, our organization in New Brunswick and right across the country, I think similar things are happening. We have new entrance programs for new entrants into the field, but it's maybe not enough. It's really tough to get into something like potato farming or dairy farming because there's a huge capital investment. If somebody wants to just grow some vegetables and do something similar to what maybe Betty does as a sideline with her farm markets, that's happening increasingly successfully in southern Ontario, for example, where there's a big market. It's really, really tough in the rural Maritimes because we don't have the population. If you're going to farm, you should be able to farm and make a living at farming. You shouldn't have to be looking for ways to put food on the table so that you can put food on other people's tables.
Farmers making a decent return on their investment so that they could look and they say, oh, at the end of the year, Dad and Mom had $50,000 left over. That's the kind of job I want to do, and okay, there is money there. I won't be living below the poverty line as we have.
To put it very simply, I think if there was a lot of money to be made farming, there'd be young farmers everywhere you look. As we let a generation or two go that don't stay on the farm, then you're going to have something there to help these people get started, even to the knowledge transfer. Yeah.
Coming out of university with the kind of education and ambition that a lot of, or college, that these young farmers have and need, who's going to put the time in, who's going to put their life into a situation where no matter how hard they work and what long hours, they're not going to be able to make a living. So we've got to have a guaranteed income for farmers, and we've got to have daycare for rural areas, and we've got to have good education programs and mentorship programs, and we've got to have it soon because, as Victor said and Betty, we're losing the knowledge of how to farm.
We should comment on, when we're talking about the National Farmers Union, is about their analysis of problems and their excellent policies and the solutions they put forward. I mean, there isn't any other organization, I think, that can come up with the answers that they can. I think it's all done looking at a farmer's point of view, and we understand immediately what they're saying once we've read it.
They're trying to get rid of the wheat board. I mean, supply management will be next, you know. We need support. We need the government to say, we will feed Canadians first. We will not let Canadian consumers be at the mercy of other countries.
We're also looking at climate change. We're looking at all kinds of international trade challenges right now. We're just going to have to be really smart and really engaged and use our organization as effectively as we can.
Well, we're going to need the public on our side if we're going to ever encourage the government people to do anything for us at all, because that's what they respond to, is pressure. And also, the third thing, as farmers, we're going to have to stand together and learn to stand together, or we're going to lose everything.
Key issues we've always had in the Maritimes is corporate control. The commodity market is a very fickle market, and we're always because of our proximity or lack of proximity to Toronto and the major centres, we've never even been in the commodity market without taking a hit. And the good years were never good enough, and slowly over time it's got to the point we've lost our meat plants, we've lost our connections and our transportation. The solutions are we have to redraw the Canadian border. We have to take food out of the free trade agreements and stuff. We have to nationalize our food system to make sure our farmers get paid. As far as I'm concerned, you have a right as a Canadian to have a healthy food system, and if you can't afford it, then there's something else wrong here that we have to deal with. All Canadians have to deal with this food issue. I mean, I can disappear, this farm can disappear, but it doesn't solve the issue of the fact that the cheap food system is a wrong, unjust system for the environment, for the people all over the world, China and all these impoverished countries that are exporting the food to us. There's a real human cost no matter how cheap the food is. The buy local thing isn't good enough. We need a nationalized food system. There's no great money and it's a heck of a lot more work for me. In a real economy, I should be able to take these pigs to a plant, get properly paid for them, and some other entrepreneur and businessman takes that pig, makes a product with that pig, and it goes on down the line. In my case, I have to get up on a Saturday morning at 5, do all my work, go into that market and be nice to people from 9 to 1, and that's a heck of a stretch. At the end of the day, I do my numbers, and there's no great money in it. For all the work that I do, I would far sooner stay home and just produce pigs that go on down for another entrepreneur to have a job. Oh, I think all producers got milked. The hog producers, the beef producers. Supply managed producers are holding it together. The dairy guys, I'm a dairy guy myself, I'm on the milk board. And the feather guys with the supply management. It's not a perfect system by any stretch of the imagination. It's hard to get new people into the system, but at least it's some kind of a system.
Absolutely essential for the strength of the movement to have a local that is viable, serves the community. And I think we have to move to one step further now. We have to move towards recapturing or capturing more wealth that is being produced in the community than is now currently there, because there's not sufficient wealth staying there to finance and sustain the community. And it's very simple.
It's stronger than ever, but the thing about it is, if you want to really make progress in it, you have to have the power, and the power comes up through the membership. And if farmers don't recognize their need to use be a countervailing force against the corporations, then it'll be a long time until you can really make substantial progress. Because other than that, you're just a pawn in the game of chess, you know.
There were quite a few of us who were actually students who were brought into the Saskatchewan Farmers Union at that time, but hired by a guy called Fred Goodmanson. And Fred had a unique way of training his staff people. He had a long history of working with people, and he had a long history of working with organizations that were committed to change. So one of the things that Fred did was he talked about what is real democracy and what is autocracy. Ironically, Fred was like a benevolent dictator. He was able to get you excited about organizing people, but in that process, the ultimate decisions were made by the people that were being involved.
Over the last generation or two, you've seen this incredible move toward corporatization and concentration, where you'd have a whole bunch of regional players, then you'd move to a few national players, and then 2 or 3 international global players. So you've got fewer and fewer people competing either to supply the product or to buy it, and that means they're more powerful, they take more for themselves. Well, the National Farmers Union really was created as a way to do that on every level, to talk about agribusiness power and where the farmer fits, to educate, to organize, and to actually mobilize farmers to balance that power. Because without a balance of power, farmers can't get what they need out of the marketplace in terms of profits and revenues.
If our position ends up jeopardizing more farmers, putting more farmers out of business, taking them off the land, then we ourselves as organizations are going to disintegrate, right? And I think that the NFU has always had that in mind. It's always been about protecting family farmers, keeping as many farmers on the land as possible. Good earnest stewardship does start with having more farmers out there. So, I think that the NFU too has to focus on knowing and promoting the fact that our policies would keep more farmers on the land, and therefore we'd have more members, right? I mean, I don't understand farm organizations who espouse policies that will decimate the number of farmers. They're shooting themselves in the foot too.
The domination and loss of autonomy farmers are experiencing because we've allowed, through legislative measures and nothing else, let's make this completely clear. It's not because, if we use the example of biotechnology, it's not because these companies have developed genetically modified seeds and that they've somehow, by sales, etc., have been allowed to dominate the marketplace. It's been us as citizens that have put in place the legislative tools for them to facilitate that dominance, both of the seeds and of the farmer producing it, that is the issue.
You hear at different farm meetings, well, if we could only reduce the tariff protection for supply management, we could export more canola. If we could only get rid of the tariff protection for dairy, we could export more pork, etc., etc. Meaning we'll sacrifice a farmer on this side, in order to access a market in Europe or someplace else. And there's a farmer over there that's providing for that domestic market. And these people don't say so, but their ambition is to displace him too.
This is my grandmother, and it's dated Saturday, January the 21st, 1939, so we're still in the Depression era. And once again, she believed in direct marketing, and she believed in selling to her regular customers. So she went to the local market in Galt, which is now part of Cambridge, Ontario. And it said on January the 21st, it was mild and foggy. Went to market, sold chickens, and she realized $3.65. She got 25 cents for butter. She sold 64 dozen eggs and got $14. It's interesting too that my grandfather got his underwear that day, and they cost $4.38. So it still seems to me that agricultural products were pretty cheap compared to other consumer products such as your underwear. We've been in the forefront of trying to maintain a sane policy for small abattoirs and meat processing. Ludicrous rules and regulations being applied to small, rural abattoirs that basically were driving them out of business.
It's certainly been the Farmers Union leading the charge. We have produced this card which says, "Save our small abattoirs." Small, locally owned and operated, provincially inspected abattoirs are a key ingredient in safe local food.
And they're the key to these abattoirs. We talk about the market, and the market's really important.
Yeah.
But that infrastructure, this whole local thing falls apart. If we don't have things like those abattoirs to make this product available, there is no local food in that, in terms of meat. And so they're a key part of that, and people forget about that. And we used to have processing plants for vegetables, Ontario vegetables. Those are gone. In the last couple of years, we've lost those.
Because it's the right thing to do. I didn't want to have chemicals on the farm. We had a very close situation that one of our kids, who was 2 or 3 years old, playing with a treated seed in the barn, and really that did it.
And the big change for us in our mindset, it came when we started to farm organically, that all of a sudden we were not commodity producers anymore, but we were food producers, and we were, or are, for a large part as farmers, responsible for the well-being of the Canadian population. I'm Dutch, so what else can the Dutchies do than milk cows and make cheese, right? We're known for that, so I have lack of imagination. Ineke has a great imagination and said, well, ice cream is fun. When you say ice cream, people smile, you can play around with flavors, you always can do something new.
It's very sensual too, of course. It's the whole thing, it's an experience. You savor it, you just enjoy it. And also because there was no organic ice cream in Canada, so we were the first, and it's always very good in business to be the first.
it's a challenge just to find the financial resources we need as a small town market to survive. I'm actually the chair of the board of the St. Mary's Farmers Market, and we don't have a lot of places to go for support just to keep as markets that are really focused on local farmers. You have to be a local producer to sell at this market. And one of the things that's been key for this market the last couple of years is actually the National Farmers Union, the Perth Oxford Local, has given us a donation both of the last couple of years, and it's actually something that's really needed.
I think it can really impact the national scene as well. What are the principles in local food, and how do we carry them over into other scales of production? Part of it is it gets extended. We feed Canadians first, build a strong domestic market place, and then from there jump off into the global opportunities. But without that solid domestic system, we're in chaos, and we can't support innovation, we can't support risk.
Through a friend of mine, I heard about the craft boycott, and we formed a committee. And it was really interesting because it was, the NFU I think was fairly new at that point. It was just sort of up-and-coming organization, and this was, I think, one of the first big campaigns that the NFU had done. So what we did was we went around and talked to people outside of grocery stores who were very receptive, and we said basically, look, you know, the NFU, we're representing the NFU, and what's happening is Kraft is basically getting rid of the family farm. Do you want that to happen? They said, no, not really. I mean, we don't like Kraft anyway, and we don't think that's right. So there was an alliance that happened between the National Farmers Union and the urban folk, which was really interesting and something I had never done before. It was really something for me because I had been at demonstrations before, but I hadn't actually come up and talked to people and said, please boycott something, please boycott this product. And they were very receptive. It was very encouraging and I think very positive, and I think it worked.
If you want small farms, if you want small sustainable farms, then you'll have to pay the real value of the food, the real value of the labor of the farmer that works. I've often said people in cities really should be forced to run a garden, have a garden, and so they can see how much work it does involve in raising food. Even people who come here, they complain about the price of food, and then, you sort of have a conversation with them, you point out all the labor that goes into it, and then they start to get interested and they start to think, well, maybe we are getting food that's too cheap. You get what you pay for. Everyone but the farmer will take their cut, but the farmer has no way of setting their own price. So you don't make any profit.
We grow certified organic apples. We're the only certified organic orchard in New Brunswick. Well, we thought when we bought this place over 30 years ago that it would be an easy crop to grow. We, of course, learned quite differently. It's about the hardest crop to grow in the northeast of North America. But anyway, we made a go of it, and we've got 5 acres of apple trees here. We put wooden apples in the tree and paint them red, and we coat them with tanglefoot, which is the stuff that's on flypaper. Because the apple maggot, which produces a worm that tunnels through the apples, lays her eggs on those apples, and she looks for the biggest, reddest apple she can find. And when she finds the wooden apple, she gets stuck in the flypaper goo and doesn't get to lay her eggs. No eggs, no worms. The NFU supports small farmers and family farms and gives us some kind of input into farm policy in Canada that we wouldn't have otherwise. It's a whole different deal from global trade. Global trade is just the race to the bottom. And fair trade supports farmers and gives them a fair price for what they grow.
What comes to my mind right off is I think the land legislation on the island. We wouldn't have had the land limits if it wasn't for the National Farmers Union, I think. And I think that was a pretty significant piece of legislation because it put a limit on the amount of acreage that Urbans and other big corporations could own at the time, and they were trying to put a lot of pressure on us.
The thing I look back at is one of the most important things that we done as a farm group was back in 1971 when we had a major demonstration here, a tractor demonstration as it's often called here on Prince Edward Island, and it really changed the face of political clout that farmers had and could have, to make some changes. We brought in a lot of new members and people, they either loved us or hated us. And it sort of drew a line in the sand of whether you stood in unity or whether you go with the powers that be.
I think it's when we have other demonstrations too that we have had, and I think of one in particular where we went to Province House with some other groups that are like-minded with the NFU, and that's always good. And we had a coffin and we laid it on the steps of the legislature, and the coffin contained the family farmers of PEI, and saying that, you know, that unless something constructive is done to help farming, really support it, then, you know, this is where we're going to end up. And I think now, just recently, Urban being nominated for the Atlantic Agricultural Hall of Fame, that is a real victory for the NFU, because I looked at the list and I don't know if there's one NFU person has ever been inducted into that Hall of Fame.
One of the major ones was when we were successful in getting the 1973 Agriculture Products Marketing Act passed in the PEI legislature.
I think the tractor demonstration, it really brought the National Farmers Union to PEI. I wasn't involved personally, I was home milking the cows, but Urban was on the tractor, and I had the phones, and we kept people overnight, and we made tea and coffee, and we saw that everyone was comfortable. But to me, that was really when the National Farmers Union, and now the Women's Institute of PEI, we're trying to get labeling into the chain stores and to buy island products.
I think the PVYN crisis, the union got Kevin Arsenault to research it, and so then they made a victory for the NFU.
So it just made a big difference in the whole community. You know, the fact that we had programs for the youth, they loved it, and they were involved at the local, and then they went to the national programs, to the national conventions. Women and youth could speak their voice and say how they felt about what the things that were happening, instead of just my husband speaking about it or whatever.
Before the National Farmers Union came in, there was kind of a sense of hopelessness amongst the farmers, and they all of a sudden felt that they had a voice and a way to express themselves. And
I was there at the first demonstration I had in my life, I guess, was down Borden. And anyway, at that time I didn't belong to the union, but as soon as I signed up after that. So I've been back in the union ever since, I guess you might say. And there should be some hope out there. It's the only hope there is the union, as far as I'm concerned.
It's during the exhibition in Charlottetown, a lot of people were complaining, why are you doing this to our children, holding us up? Well, we said the people that's going to be doing the eating the food someday, and they're not going to people don't get prices, they're not going to make farmers left. And we're still saying that, and it's getting, but there's less and less farmers all the time.
And I've been there over the years, and I've seen our way of life being picked at and torn apart.
I guess the tractor demonstration was pretty good, but there's a lot of things that forget the things that happen every day. You kind of got to be involved and try and watch what's going on. Our newspapers won't print what we write, and the radio won't talk what we want to talk. I wonder how we can get it out. I'd like to see someone driving around with a loudspeaker with a tape recorder playing it all the time.
I found that the NFU was, like Gordon and Vessey said there, but it was quite an education. It taught us who the enemy is. And
the thing is, we have good standards in this country. We have good producers that are producing the best of food, and we're not getting paid for it. We're getting 25-year prices, 25-year-old prices. And we're all sitting around here tonight. We're talking about the next generation farming. There's going to be no next generation if we don't get foisters again, and we got to get the people out there, because we're a minority. We're a minority. Farmers are a minority now. We've got to get the people with us. I don't know how we do it, but I'm sure we can come up with the answer. We've got to educate that public out there that we are in dire straits. There's something wrong, it's sick, it's gotta be, it needs a quick trip to the doctor. And I don't know who the doctor is.
A lot of farmers are being tied up now, and they can't get on a tractor and they can't speak out. Anybody who's contracted potatoes with Cabbage Farms or McCain, even if they speak up at their meetings without getting on a tractor, they're going to lose their contract. And I know people that have lost the contract. So, you know, it's getting harder to get people out all the time.
Irving's and McCain's blatantly make a news release that they're going to cut off 20 to 30 smaller farmers. But what you do with that, the big farmers will say, okay, we all stop hauling and just shut her down. That's what you do. And then you wouldn't be worrying about speaking out. As the farmers, the large farmers, realize that down the road, all the farmers need one another. And in union of strength.
Tractor demonstration in 71, and then the other demonstrations we had in 73, I guess it was. There's no problem getting 500-600 farmers together, which was probably half the farmers on the island at that time. Which today, there's not even 500 farmers in total if you add everybody up almost.
You take all the young people that are farming, they're smart enough to do it, but you cannot do it by losing money. There has to be a guaranteed minimum price based on cost of production. And else they have that, they are done. They are done. In fact, you won't get them. They just won't come to it.
It's heartbreaking. And to think that you work so hard and yet there's no way to recoup your costs.
A big part of the problem is how we treat land and how every generation has to pay the market value for land, whether it's a development value or agricultural value even. And so you just pass debt from generation to generation. Society has this expectation that land is a capital asset that needs to be maximized, the value. You've seen our farm. It's right on a point of land. There's water all around it. The development potential is immense. A lot of people that come in see that, and that's the first damn thing out of their mind, is that, this is a gold mine, And, it hurts to see that, because you might as well have a toxic waste dump as a cottage on farmland,
Ranald, they had a very good system a number of years ago in Saskatchewan with the land banking. They wanted to get rid of the powers that be, wanted to get rid of that. And that's a system that we need to be going to. But I'm on a piece of land, and I'm in the Charlottetown, so-called Charlottetown buffer zone. I can't do a thing with my land. I was one of the first ones and the most vocal in my CIC, in my community, of having our good farmland designated as agriculture land. I would love to sell my land to a farmer, and I have a little bit of something to retire on. But I can't do that. I'm restricted from doing it. So I can't even sell it to somebody else that may want to develop it and put a housing development on it. I'm restricted from that. My hands are tied.
Personally, I feel that the greatest pressure in the next 10 years in the Lands Protection Act will be from farmers that are trying to retire and don't have young people, coming up through through their own farm to.
They had a petition at St. Mary's University looking for support from all the student body to change the cafeteria rules. They were tired of getting not just Cisco food, the whole general thing to it there. They want some local food. They want a better quality food, and they want to know where it comes from. Now, there's a number of students there from Dalhousie Student Union also, and they had a petition going to their university. And I gather there's quite a few others in doing that around the country.
I think the internet should be a real something that the farmers should be really using awful lot more to get consumers educated what's going on, and to really use the internet to the fullest to get that word out and get people to understand.
To the consumers, I think they darn well better get behind the farmers and support the farmers, and not just buy local, but buy local and pay the cost of production. That has to be part of it. And because if we don't have farmers in this country, we're going to be in a serious, serious situation. Because where's our food going to come from? What's it going to cost? What's the quality going to be like? I think we'd better soon wake up before it's too late, and it's getting almost to the 11th hour now.
As long as we continue on to elect governments that don't give a hoot about where the food comes from, because I know we met with the Minister of Agriculture, not the fellow we have now, but the guy before him, Ian Charlatan here, and he said, so what's your problem? And we said, well, farmers are going down the drain, we're losing growth, young people have no place to start up again, they want to farm, but yet there's nothing to come out. And yes, so what's your problem? And so we just sort of looked at him, and he said, you know, he said, what you don't understand, he said, there's lots of food produced worldwide, and we can have access to any amount of it.
But I think the free trade deal is, that really put the final big nail in the coffin of farmers.
Another front in terms of having fair trade, which will reduce the cost of production for farmers, and make those links with consumers and eaters. I think even if we work on that and try to build a small system there, I think we'll have much more influence on the national level in terms of instituting a force against free trade, for fair trade, and for getting the guaranteed annual income for farmers. Because there has to be something drastically happen in the next while if we want to have agriculture to be able to continue. If people want to eat and have decent food in this region, there has to be some ways to get food sovereignty.
Well, in union and strength really means that the solutions that lie ahead of us are collective solutions. That we need to push back against this urge to individualize everything in society. There's a tremendous history and strength in rural areas around collective action and working together, and that's what we need to tap into here.
But there's a real role that the NFU can play there, because its great connector is its understanding the national scope and the interconnections between farmers in eastern Canada, central Canada, and the west, and the different commodity groups.
So what do we need to do? We can't be just an agricultural lobby in action. We need to form coalitions beyond with people that our experiences can inform, but their experiences are also similar and can help us in that battle with government.
I don't think I'd be farming today without the Farmers Union. I know there's no way that I would be farming without this organization.
It really is empowering. It really feels as though, you know, I'm part of a bigger picture.
I guess one other thing I would really like to see is a strong network between farmers across the country, and a lot of support for, you know, for the National Farmers Union and connections between farmers across the country so we can learn from each other and help each other.
I sometimes say I'm not optimistic. If by optimism you mean that expected trend line of good outcomes, the trend line is not good. The outcomes don't look positive. But I am deeply hopeful, because by hope I mean you can imagine the alternatives and you can envisage and feel the life forces which would make those alternatives real. And that's hope, and I am very, very hopeful.
My line is always, I wouldn't have any group represent me that didn't have farmer in the name. And I think a lot of other organizations think that if we look after agriculture somehow, and if we look after the corn, or we look after the cows, or we look after the pigs, or the canola, the farmers will be okay. That's never worked for me.
The Farmers Union for me has been a chance to learn to be a little bit scrappy and have fun doing it.
I think food is going to be the issue of the future, food and water. And as Canadians, I think each and every citizen needs to think about their part.
It's a wonderful crowd. I think I'd like to just be part of that wonderful crowd in terms of innovation, working together with La Via Campesina.
And it'd just be great to be part of a group of people that are all pulling worldwide in the same direction.
Well, it's important that we organize each other and understand each other. Yeah, it's still important. We don't always do it. A lot of us are independent, want it our own way and whatnot, and we're not for working together. And that's still important across the country.
When
revolution through the farmer's blood shall run. There can be no power greater anywhere beneath the sun. Yet what force on earth is weaker than the feeble strength of one? For the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever, solidarity forever, solidarity forever, for the union makes us strong. It is we who plowed the prairies, built the cities where they trade, dug the mines and built the workshops, endless miles of railway laid. Now we stand outcast and starving, midst the wonders we have made, but the union